Designing your yard can feel really overwhelming. Like, where do you put things? How do you make it look like it goes together? So today I'm going to show you two powerful tools that will help you go through this process a lot easier. They are bubble diagrams and lines of force. Together, these two tools will help you move from having just ideas to a design that actually works for your space. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Amy, and over at Pretty Purple Door, I help home gardeners design landscapes that are uniquely you. So first, I'm going to go over just a quick definition of what are bubble diagrams, what are lines of force, and how they actually fit into the entire landscape design process. And then I'm going to show you some real concrete examples of how you can use these two tools at home to make your landscape look beautiful, look put together, and flow with your home. So first, let's get into what is a bubble drawing or a bubble diagram. This is a really quick, loose sketch that just shows where different areas of a landscape design might go, like your patio, your lawn, garden beds, play zones, a shed, things like that. It's based on your wish list or your actual goals for the space, and it's just a really quick method that helps you explore early layout ideas before locking in shapes or locking in materials or locking in actual placement and sizes. And lines of force is the other thing we're going to be talking about today. And lines of force are really simple. They're just imaginary lines that you draw outward from your house. You draw the lines from your doors, from your windows, from the corners of the house, from other structures on the property. And these will help you create a flexible grid that helps shape your layout and start to align the pieces of your landscape with your actual home and the structures on your property. So just think of it as connecting your house to your landscape. In this example from a book called Foundations of Landscape Architecture. It's by Norman K. Booth. Really great book if you're kind of nerdy and you want to get into the details of landscape design. These lines that he drew here are directly straight out from the house edges. So you're looking at this property from above, a bird's eye view. It's called a plan view. And then the lines are just drawn directly straight out from the windows, the doors, and the edges of the property. He then drew horizontal lines, so you could see those two in the middle drawing here on the screen. And those are just evenly spaced to kind of create a grid for himself. If you had actual structures on the property, you would draw the lines out from there, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit with our example that we're going to work on. But this is just a really simple example of how you go from drawing the lines, creating the grid, and then filling in that yard with an actual design. So before we get ahead of ourselves, this is the full landscape design process that I personally follow. Very much thanks to Lisa Nunemaker from papergardenworkshop.com for all of the guidance and the clarity around this whole process. She's a mentor to me, and I learned this process from her. So basically, there are three phases in landscape design. There's collect, design, and document. In the collect phase, it's basically just gathering information about the project. I gather information from both the client and the site. So if it were for your home garden and you're doing this yourself, you're going to gather information from yourself, like a wish list, what you want and what you need. And also you're going to start measuring your site and making observations of your actual property and what is there for you to work with. Then a designer would take that information and work on a design, which includes coming up with a mood board, concepts for the space, and just a general preliminary design that the client can look at. After that, the documentation process is where all of the little details come in. So in the collect and design phase, it's kind of just a broad vision. And then in the documentation phase, after everything is approved, we go into a master plan, choosing materials, creating a planting plan, all of the construction details that may need to be worked out, and anything else that's needed for that specific project. So like I said, there's lots of different things going on here, and we're kind of just smack dab in the middle of the design process here with bubble diagrams and lines of force. So this means that everything before these steps, all of these things have already been done at this point in the process. You have a site survey, you have a base map drawing of your property, you know the conditions, you have a wish list of what you want, you've already kind of decided on a style, you have some inspiration photos, and you have at least a vague idea of what you want for your space. And if you're struggling with any of these steps, I highly recommend my Plant Perfect Activity book. It walks you through the first two steps of this design process so that you're ready to plant perfectly and with confidence. So again, today we're going to be talking about bubble drawings, and I'll show you how to make those. And the lines of force are what's going to help us define the structure after the bubble diagrams. I'm going to show you how I create bubble drawings in just a minute. I'm going to be using my iPad for this, but you don't need to. All you need is a photocopy, a printout of your property designed to scale. So this would be a drawing that you created yourself. You can even go on Google Earth and get the shape of your property from above from Google Earth. And then you would just print that out and use tracing paper on top of it to create these bubble drawings. And here are just a few guidelines I use when I'm creating bubble drawings that can help you get started, because I know a lot of people are just like, I don't even know what to do here. So the first thing that I do is draw circulation paths. So I know where paths and walkways may need to be added, and everything that's currently on the property is accessible. So I'll draw little arrows to show where walkways, where doors to things, where people walk. And then after that, I try to just design the open spaces. So this would be patios, walkways, lawn areas. Everything that's on the wish list is designed and drawn in little circles, squares, rectangles, however you want to do it. Just really basic shapes. I'm not really thinking about garden beds at this point. I usually just draw the bigger void areas. And just as a rule of thumb, I like to keep 2/3 of the property with these actual functional open spaced areas and save about 1/3 of the space for planting. So I hope that kind of rule of thumb helps you. It's not set in stone or anything, so don't worry about it too much. The next thing to think about is just trying to keep things connected, keeping zones simple. Perfection is not needed here. You're just exploring ideas. When I get into these bubble drawings, you're going to see actually how fast I really work with this. So really, really simple, and don't worry about exact measurements at all. You're just going to focus on relationships and like general sizes of the different pieces of the landscape. This is a really simple process. So I just wanted to show you how quickly I actually go through this. So here's my property. I have a parking pad here. This is the outline of the house. The kitchen has a double door that goes out to the backyard. There's also a door from the office and a window here right where the bathroom is, okay? So what I did was I just drew these arrows to show where people are circulating. So you're gonna have to get from the parking pad to the house. You're gonna have to get out this office door. You're gonna have to go out over here, and you're gonna want to be able to get out of the kitchen and probably go this way to get out or to go to the parking. So that's the first step, is just knowing in your head where those circulation paths are. The next step is to have a wish list. So I usually just write it on the side here. And these are the areas of the design that I have to incorporate with my bubble drawing. So for this project, we're doing a patio, a lawn space, a play area. They want a vegetable garden, a utility area / a shed, and possibly some more storage. Just a very basic design wish list. So we're going to just start creating different layouts. Now you could already have your lines of force inserted here. So here's actually my vertical lines of force. And if you want to draw the bubble diagram over these lines, that's totally fine. I have the 45 set too. I'm going to show you how to do that a little bit later in the process, because I actually don't use those when I'm working on my bubble diagram. I just have the traffic patterns in mind. So I'm going to remove those, and then I'm just going to start sketching. And it's just a really, really simple process. So the first thing I would want to do is outside of the kitchen, might want to have some kind of landing area. And then maybe I will do the vegetable area here. So this will be veg here. And then maybe this whole area here is a big lawn space. Yeah, maybe not that far, maybe from here. So this is just a big lawn. And then I put the patio in this area here, and I put a shed here. So I'm just kind of filling in. I definitely need some kind of walkway to get to parking, right? They're going to be coming out of this area here, walking over, so that's okay. Maybe we could put some more storage for them here in addition to the shed. And then all of these empty spaces here, this would be like a garden bed, garden bed here. This is a storage. So that's one idea, right? I got everything in here. The play area I didn't specifically call out, but it could be in the lawn area, or maybe where I have this bed, that would be a play area. So that's one idea. I just go really quick. Let's do another idea, okay? Instead of having the lawn and like a small landing, let's just do a big patio. So this whole area here is going to be a patio, right? And then from here, we still have to get to parking. So I'm going to do a path there. And I want to make sure that they can walk out that way. And instead of the lawn being in this area, let's do the lawn like in this big area here, right? So this is lawn. I still need to fit in vegetable garden. How about right here? How about this in this area here? We'll do veg. And maybe I can put a little bit of storage over here for them. Right outside of the door if they want to store cushions, things like that. And we'll put a shed just in the top corner. So that fits everything. Again, I didn't separate the play space. Let me do that. And the next one I'm going to separate and actually do a separate play space. But right now I'm thinking like this will be a bed. This will be a bed. This will be beds back here. So the garden beds come after I already define everything that needs to go in the space. And then, yeah, the lawn can be divided in some way to add that play area. Okay, that's idea 2. Let's try again. Let's do a patio. Maybe that's just in this area this time, patio. So right off the kitchen. And then let's just do lawn that's kind of like this whole area, like the whole center, a big lawn. They're gonna have to get over here from the patio, and they're gonna have to get up here to the parking. And they're also gonna have to get out that way. So maybe over here we could do vegetable garden on this side. And again, these are taking into consideration like sun levels, like where there's an appropriate amount of sun and shade for what you want to put in there. So you're definitely thinking about that. That's all done in the first step of the design process. And then here, okay, so we need a play area and we need like a utility. So let's again put the utility shed here. And let's do a play area here in the back corner. So we've actually incorporated that play area. We're also going to need to get from the patio to the utility area. So we'll put in a little path here. And then here, this would be beds. We actually have a nice little space here too for some kind of storage for cushions and things like that. And all around here would be the garden beds in these areas, right? So as we refine this and look at the lines of force part, we might shrink that size of the lawn if we want to include more garden beds, things like that. But this is just another concept. And let's try one more. Okay, so we'll do one more. Instead of the patio here by the kitchen, instead of a big one, let's do the patio here, right off the office. So it's going to be in this area. Okay, patio. And that kind of eliminates the need for a big walkway cutting through because you'll just kind of use the patio. So you'll also need some kind of walkway from here. Maybe we'll have like a landing to come out, and then there's a walkway to get to this patio and to get out here. I can probably do a vegetable here and maybe even here and here, right? So these will be like 4 vegetable beds. And I'll just label that really quick. And then we kind of have a pretty big area here for like lawn. So again, they don't have to be circles. I just made this an awkwardly strange shape. And here I'm going to put just shed and storage all up here. Or we could use this for storage. These are vegetable beds. This can be lawn and play. I could see how this might be able to be divided so that play is up here and lawn is here. So let's erase that. So this is how I work. You go really quickly. You just keep iterating. If you're doing this on paper, just tracing paper works really great, but you're just trying to see, like, what if I put the patio here? What if I put the shed in the back? What if I decided I wanted to put the shed right in the front? I mean, I think that would be silly to have it right outside the kitchen, but maybe in the corner here. Who knows? Just play and experiment and have fun with it. It's super messy, super sloppy. I know the example I showed you, that would be like more of a refined one. After I chose which one I wanted to use, I might clean this up a bit. So that's how you do bubble drawings. Just play and have fun and try to fit everything from your wish list and include all of the traffic and circulation so that you can get from one place to the next. Okay, so we've explored a lot of different ideas and different layouts with these bubble drawings. Now comes the really hard part in the process because you actually have to pick one of these to move forward with. Sometimes I'll choose 2 if I really can't decide, but let's just pick one for now. So this is the one that I chose from my bubble drawings, and this is what I'm going to use moving forward. So now that we have our bubble drawing, the next step is to draw lines of force into the design to create a grid. So basically now we're just going to remove the bubble drawing, draw in those lines, and then try to take all of the pieces from that bubble drawing and fit them into the grid. I'm first going to show you how to draw the lines of force for 90 degrees or straight out, and then I'll do another design for 45 degrees. So I'm going to show you the whole process, drawing the lines out, creating the grids at different angles, and then how I take this bubble drawing and turn it into a structured landscape design layout. The act of creating your lines of force is actually a very straightforward process. I know it sounds fancy and everything, but it's really, really simple. You just draw straight lines. You can do 45-degree angles. Some designers will even do 30 or 60 degrees. You can combine them all together. You do these from the edges of the doors, from the edges of the windows, from the edges of the structures, edges of the property. If there's an alcove or something, you're using those as well. You can use a ruler, a straight edge. You can draw freehand. Doesn't matter too much. What's really cool is you can also draw what's called sight lines when you're doing this, and these go from the center of the door and from the center of the windows. These are really useful in placing focal points and creating nice views from inside your home. So what would be the framed view from when you're looking out your kitchen window, things like that. And again, these lines aren't rules. This isn't the only way you can do things. They're just guides to help you shape your layout and align it with the home. Just think of this as a tool in your toolbox. It's not the only way to do things. So let's get into the example of how you draw these lines. So in this step, we're just grabbing from any corners and edges in the design, like the edges of the house, the edges of the windows, the doorways, and even the edges of the parking pad here in this design. If you don't have any structural elements like this parking pad or shed or something, many designers will just create even horizontal lines across the property to create a grid like that picture that we saw earlier in this video. But because I have the parking pad here, I'm using that line and then I'm splitting the two areas that line created in half. So that's how I created the grid here. I hope that makes sense. So now we're just going to layer the bubble diagram over the grid or the grid under the bubbles and start shaping things. So we're going to take that really loose bubble drawing that we did and we're going to try to see if we can fit it into the grid somehow. Typically the 90-degree lines are the easiest to work with. So you're going to use those lines of force to shape the edges of your patios or your lawns, to place features along or between lines, to find focal points where lines converge directly from the center of doorways or windows. Again, these are called sight lines and they're very powerful for placing focal points. Another tip I have is just to try to share lines as much as possible. For example, the line of the patio here is sharing a line with the garden bed to the left of it. The line of the walkway to the parking area is sharing the vegetable garden bed area. So this keeps the design less fussy, more simple, and more clean. So here we have the bubble drawing. And then we have the lines of force, and then I'm showing on the right-hand side how I fit the bubble drawing into the lines to make a nice design that's really well thought out and connects to the home and the structures around it. It's pretty cool, isn't it, how you can do this? So this is the first example. Now let's try the same design with 45-degree angles this time. This is a bit trickier, but I know some of you are up for that challenge, so let's get right into that. So here we are doing the exact same thing as we did before. We're drawing those lines from the exact same locations, from the edges of the house, edges of the doors, edges of the windows, and the parking pad, and even the corners of the property you can use at this stage. But instead of using straight lines, we're doing 45-degree angles. Designers will mix this up too. Sometimes they'll use 30-degree or 60-degree lines, but I'm not going to get into all of that today. So you're basically drawing the same lines as you did before at a different angle. You can use a set square or a triangle ruler to help you with this if you're doing this by hand. After we get all the lines in place, you're going to start to see where some points are converging, and that may be where we'll be able to place different elements of the design. So now it's time to refer back to that bubble drawing now that we have the grid in place, and then we're going to start to define the structures of the items we need to include. This is the same exact process as last time. You use your bubble diagram, you try to fit the pieces into the grid and start shaping things. Sometimes, depending on the shape and the size of your yard, 90-degree lines will just make a lot more sense for you. But playing around 45 degrees is really fun too. It can get you thinking outside the box and thinking about different ideas that you may not have thought of if you just had a straight grid. So I like to do this process even though it's less often that I'll choose an angled design. It's just all about experimenting, having fun, seeing what works best for your space. So again, use the lines of force to shape the edges of the patios or the lawns. Place your features along or between these lines. find focal points where lines converge or directly from the center of the doorways or the windows. Remember the sight lines that we talked about earlier. Again, those sight lines are really, really helpful in placing focal points. And again, try to share lines as much as possible. For example, on this one, the line of the patio here is lined up with the walking path to the shed. So sharing lines where possible keeps the design a lot less fussy. It's more simple and clean, and it just looks more orderly. And less is more, simple is better in design. So here for this example, we have the bubble drawing and then the 45-degree lines of force. And then I'm showing how I fit the bubble drawing pieces into the lines to make a real nice design that is well thought out and connects to the home and the structures around it. It's pretty cool, isn't it? You can see that the patio ended up being quite a bit larger in this one, and the lawn area is a bit smaller. I cut some of the lawn to turn it into a garden bed area. So I did kind of mess with the bubble drawing, but I started with the bubble drawing. I did my best to fit it in, and then I just worked on it from there. So lines of force isn't some magic tool that's going to make you a great designer. It's not going to solve every problem for you. It's not a magic trick. So after the lines are put in, that's when you have to start designing. And here I just wanted to show another example of lines of force and how I use them to generate different layout ideas for the same property. I did about 8 drawings using lines of force inside of a garden design membership that I'm in. So these are just exercises. They're not real life designs that have been implemented or anything. This was more of a complex space because there was a little alcove where the doorway entered into the backyard, and the shape of the home isn't as straightforward as the example that I just showed you. So I thought this would be interesting to look at as well. But you can see that the two designs here are very different, even though I used lines of force in both of them. Also notice that at this stage, it's still very rough. I'm defining general areas of the landscape, but generally I'm not laying out an exact planting plan or choosing plants. Sometimes I'm not even choosing the materials yet of what the hardscaping will be, things like that. It's just really rough. You can see that the drawing on the left is definitely more defined than the one on the right. I think the one on the right is probably still a little bit too vague and needs some working. But often when I'm doing multiple designs, I keep them as rough as possible before I make that decision to move forward. And then I choose one and I move forward with that and I refine it from there. And here's just 2 more ideas I did from the same exact property layout. These are using the 45-degree lines of force, so I thought this would be fun to share as well. The drawing on the left, I used 45-degree lines of force to create a really unique space. This just really works for the shape of property I found. I think this was my favorite in all the series of drawings that I did for this. Like I said, I did about 8 or so. And the one on the right actually uses both the vertical straight out lines and the 45-degree lines combined together to make a really fun baseball diamond themed design. I thought this was a really fun example as well, and how lines of force can help you to create all different kinds of layouts in your design. I know I'm going to get questions too about curvilinear designs, designs with curves. And yes, this is also possible to do with lines of force, but it's often easier to start with rectangles and squares. And then once you have that laid out and you kind of like the way that it looks, then add the curves or edges later, like in this example here. It's definitely more challenging to do with curves. Curvilinear designs are more challenging in general, but they can be done. Just start with the rectangles and the squares first and add the curves later. And if you want help designing your landscape in a really fun and visual way, please don't forget to check out my Plant Perfect activity book. If you like this video, you're going to love this book. Guides you step by step through everything we just covered, from bubble drawings to lines of force to creating layouts. Think of it like a workbook for designing your yard. And I'll leave the link in the description below if you want to check that out. And if you want to keep learning on this channel, I think you're going to love this next video where I'm going to walk through a real life property and assess it for privacy needs and just show you how I'd walk through the whole process of laying out a real life space. I'm going to leave a link to that video right here, and I'll see you over in the next one.